presume saying Order 98 on November 12th at Councilor Brownell.
Thank you, Speaker. It is my pleasure to rise in the House today to speak on Bill 185, an act proclaimed September 28th in each year as British Home Child Day. I speak on this bill with the support of co-sponsors, the members from Parkdale High Park, MPP Sharon Noel, and the member from Leeds Grenville, my colleague right across the border, MPP Clark. I wish to share with my colleagues and all here in the House today a story that few Canadians know anything about, a story about courage, strength, and perseverance. It is a story of Canada's British home children. Daughters, sons, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren of home children have joined us in the legislature today, and they are here to remember their ancestors and to share their stories. Speaker, at this time I would like to welcome four siblings who are here today. Linda Burke, Beth Bruder, Janet Reagan, and their brother Fred Boyle, along with Fred's wife Susan, here today in memory of their mother, Catherine McCallum, sent from Porter's Village, Bridget, Scotland in 1927. Olivia Willer, here with her daughter Dorothy, remembering her mother and grandmother, Ivy Rose Elizabeth Warren. Iris Riley, here with her two daughters, Heather and Cheryl, remembering Iris's father, James Forbes. Mike Dean, from our riding of Storm Up the Dasso and Gary, is here with his wife Nancy talked with me, remembering Mike's grandmother, Marguerite Housley, our home child from Liverpool. Also from the riding, we welcome Carol Dyer, sitting way up in the corner, the granddaughter of Charles Frederick William Patrick Conroy, who came to Canada in 1905 aboard the Bavarian at the age of 16 years. Al Lewis joins us today with his wife Grace as Al's father, Edward Lewis, arrived in Canada in 1901 at age 11, stepping off the ship leading the priesthood. Sharon Monroe is here as the great-granddaughter of Miriam Kelly of Scotland. Lorraine Raelch, whose husband's grandfather, Robert Wilson Raelch, an orphan at Porter's Village, she sent to Canada in 1886, along with his brother John, who's here in the gallery, as are Barbara Summers, Marie Sears, and Marilyn Wilson, here today to remember their grandfather, Jesse Walker, and his sister, Emily Walker, who were sent to Canada by the Barnard Organization in 1905. Gordon Fudge and his sister, Jeanette Alexander, joins us, and they remember their mother, Gladys Fudge, sent to Canada from England at the age of 12. Speaker, between 1869 and 1939, about 100,000 children were sent to Canada from Great Britain, many of them to work as farm laborers and domestics in homes in Ontario and across Canada. These were British home children, boys and girls anywhere from 6 months to 18 years of age. They were part of the child immigration movement. Most of them came from orphanages or other institutions, such as the Maryhill Industrial School in Glasgow, Scotland, an institution well known to my grandmother, Mary Scott Pearson. For a variety of reasons, the children were sent to Canada, in particular in Ontario, as we were a growing economy in need of laborers. Officials believed these children would be better off in the new land with fresh air and wide open spaces. Most of the children were transported by British religious and charitable organizations. For the most part, these organizations believed that they were doing a good, noble thing for the children who were worse off living in poverty in Great Britain. In reflecting, Speaker, on the home children material, we think about the work of Dr. Thomas John Barnardo, the energetic founder of Barnardo's Homes that placed 30,000 children in Ontario. Hazelbrae in Peterborough, Ontario, was Dr. Barnardo's receiving room for girls. We think of the indomitable Maria Rye, who brought the first group of British children to Canada in 1869 and housed them in a refurbished jail near Niagara-on-the-Lake. We remember Annie McPherson's home, originally opened in Galt, Ontario in 1871, then moved to Stratford in 1883. Sending some 200 children to Canada each year, she came to Canada every summer to visit her children personally. James Fagan was the founder of Mr. Fagan's Home for Boys in North Buckinghamshire, England, and another community store in England. He had a distributing center at 295 George Street here in Toronto. To my family, and I welcome here today my sisters Mary and Mary the Faith and Judy Neville, and my brother Tom. My wife Paulette is up here, and so is my sister-in-law Vale. Remembering John today. We remember William Corio, who was remembered as the founder of the Orphan Homes of Scotland, having sent over 7,000 Scottish children to Canada from Warriors Village at Bridge and Weir, just outside Scotland, between 1871 and 1938. It was from Brownell home, Warriors Receiving House in Brownell, Ontario, the town from my good friend Steve Clark, MPP from Luke's Brownell, certainly knows that place, that our grandmother, that was at Fairmount, that our grandmother, Mary Scotchers, and our great aunt, Margaret Scotchers, were sent out from the home as domestics in Ontario. This afternoon, I am pleased to welcome to the legislature Keith and June McKay. They're back here for the third time. It was June's mother, Christina Miles, and they're here along with their grandson, Andrew Welch. It was June's mother, Christina Miles, who arrived in Canada as a home child in 1914. And her uncle James Miles arrived in 1915. And I remember the last time I had the private member's bill, I had heard their two Bibles sitting right on my desk here. And I know that they're out there with June today. They were sent from Warriors home in Scotland to the same receiving home in Brockville that I alluded to earlier. As for my grandmother, she was just 42 days shy of her 14th birthday when she arrived as an orphan at Halifax, Nova Scotia, aboard the SS Hibernian on September 28, 1891. After spending some time in Cottage 10 in Warriors Village, her command department from Brownell, Scotland, aboard the SS Pomeranian in 1894. Fortunately for these two young orphans, they were to be reunited in Eastern Ontario before Maddie departed with her husband to Manitoba and to homestead there. In the gallery today is Patricia Sinclair, whose great-grandfather, Henry Poinsett, came to Canada on April 2, 1889, under the auspices of the Marshall Home, the McPherson's receiving distribution home in Belleville, Ontario. The story of the British home children, the speaker, is one of challenge, determination, and perseverance. Many home children faced adversity. Most were able to overcome it, but it was by no means easy. The British home children faced considerable challenges and some experienced tremendous hardship. They were susceptible to mistreatment because their conditions were not closely monitored. Arriving in Ontario with their worldly possessions tucked in little wooden trunks, siblings were often separated upon their arrival, and many never to see each other again. This is an important part of the story that deserves to be told. Pat Hollins, who is here today, said in an email to me that under the care of Mosaic Rescue, my father, and I quote, Ernest Charles Turner, and his two brothers came to Canada on June 24, 1921. Their father died in World War I, and no one is sure if the boys lived in the same residence or if they had been separated once they arrived at St. George's home in Ottawa. Their story was not in there. Due to their remarkable courage, strength, and perseverance, Canada's British home children did endure, and most of them went on to lead healthy and productive lives and contributed immeasurably to the development of Ontario. While the British home children were underprivileged and suffered from unfortunate circumstances, they endured, and almost all of them who came to Canada remained in Canada and indeed in Ontario. They grew up to raise families of their own. They contributed to our country's economic growth and prosperity. They helped to cultivate our country's values and defend our country's freedom. More than 10,000 of them fought for Canada in the First and Second World Wars. In a message to me from Ivy Susie, who was here in the gallery, I quote, my father was a Bernardo boy who came to Canada in 1898. He suffered at first, but was then placed with a lovely family that treated him as their own. Ivy is the founder and president of the Hazel Gray Bernardo Home Memorial Group in Peterborough and has done great things to bring the home child story to her community. And I understand that if this bill passes, she will be unveiling a memorial to the home children on September 28th of this year. As well, I welcome Sam Joyce. Her dad, Robert Joyce, came over to Canada from Warriors home in 1925. He was 15 and his brother 12. Robert worked on farms in the Rockville and Twin Falls areas, but at the age of 20, he made his way to Toronto, where he enlisted in the Canadian Army and was stationed in both North Africa and Italy in World War II. Speaker, those are the contributions that the home children made to our country's freedom and its development. Canada's British home children are part of our country's history. They are part of our heritage. They represent part of our past, and their descendants represent part of our future. Their stories are ones that need to be taught in our schools. Speaker, I certainly am delighted to welcome Taylor and Cheryl Kennedy to this house today. Cheryl's great-grandfather, Frederick McNally, his own child, was arrived in Belleville on April 11, 1892. According to the family folklore, he ran away from there to Toronto, where who worked and paid his way to school to become a government veterinary surgeon. Today, it is estimated that 12% of Canada's population is made up of British home children and their descendants. That represents more than 4 million Canadians, and the number continues to grow. Yet, there are many Canadians who still do not know the story of the home children. They are not aware of the hardships that they suffered and the sacrifices that were made. They are not aware of the tremendous contributions that British home children made to the social and economic fiber of our great province. Dave Penfold is here today with his parents, Mike and Helen, as Mike's father, Frank Penfold, was a British home child. Frank sailed from Liverpool, England in 1908 on the SS Dominion, along with 173 other home children, to arrive in Montreal, Quebec. Frank spent his early years in Belleville, Ontario, and later served in World War I with the British Royal Navy for 5 years. In World War II, he served in the United Kingdom for 4 years with the Canadian Army. He later married Mary Maxwell McDonald Anderson and worked as a letter carrier. Last year, Speaker, Canada Post issued a stamp commemorating home children, as well the federal government proclaimed 2010 as the year of British home child. I had a chance to go to Scotland and travel through Scotland and learn much about my family. But today we have here in the legislature David and Catherine Laurenti, who are here, and they had an opportunity to travel to Scotland or to abroad in honor of home children. Dave and Katie, who are co-founders of Home Children Canada, were invited by the British House of Commons to go to London in 1998 to address their all-party committee looking into the welfare of former child migrants. David's father, Joseph Barker Laurenti, was a home child who arrived in Canada in 1914 at the age of 15. In closing, Speaker, I think it is time that we honor the home children of Ontario. It is time that we set aside a day, the day that my grandmother stepped on the Canadian soil, September 28th. Selfishly, I do that, but it's a day that we can all be proud to recognize and appreciate and say thank you to the home children who did so much for Ontario